Okay, so we are going to move on with our perfect tenses. Now, this is, they call it in English, the past perfect. Again, I still prefer to use the term pluscuamperfecto when we're talking about this construction. Now, this should be an easy conjugation, just like our present, our pretérito perfecto de subjuntivo was. All we did was change the conjugation of haber. We're doing the same thing here. We're just changing the conjugation of haber. We used it in the present tense, and then we use it in the present subjunctive. We use it in the present tense for the pretérito perfecto. We use it in the present subjunctive for the pretérito perfecto de subjuntivo. And now we're going to use it in the imperfect tense for the pluscuamperfecto. So we will just conjugate haber in the imperfect. And if you remember from in the imperfect tense, there were only 3 irregulars. Otherwise, it just followed the rules. So take haber, H-A-B-E-R, get rid of your E-R, and you add ia, ias, ia, iamos, ias, and ian, and then you'll have your conjugations done correctly. Había, habías, había, habíamos, habíais, and habían. Now, the past participle is formed by the ado and the ido endings. At this point, you should be familiar with what I'm talking about there. Now, the past participle that we had when we had this in the pretérito perfecto, if we're using viajar, it was viajado. It was when we did the pretérito perfecto and the pretérito perfecto subjuntivo, and now with the pluscuamperfecto, the participle is still viajado. It's the same word regardless of the tense. So whatever your verb is, if you learn it once, you know it for several different conjugations. The only thing that's different is the conjugation of haber before it. So we're going to move on and talk about when we use this pluscuamperfecto. So again, so far the grammar on this, everything we've done before, but just a new form of haber that shouldn't be too difficult for you all to understand. So here's where it gets a little bit dicey. This is where we start to get a little bit of confusion compared to the other ones. Again, it works just like it does in English, but over years of doing this and teaching it to students, maybe we're just not so great at using this in English. But whenever we would use had done something versus has done something, that's when we would use the pluscuamperfecto. So in English, if we want to say something like, I have studied, have you eaten, he has given, we have, driven. So that all those instances is when we would use the pretérito perfecto, and it's when we use the point of reference is now. We have driven. We have driven, 10 miles. We have driven 10 miles before now. That's our references right now. This is relevant to the present tense. So that's why we're using the present tense of haber, and that's why we're using the present tense of have. So we have driven before now. Where the pluscuamperfecto, our point of reference is already in the past. So our situation, whatever we did, whatever we have done, actually happened before an event in the past. So our point of reference is now in the past, and then whenever we use the past perfect, it's something that happened even before that point. So let's look at some examples. Decidí comprar una cámara digital. So I decided to buy a digital camera. Nueva. So a new digital camera. Porque la vieja se me había roto varias veces. Because the old one, has broken on me several times. So it's broken several times. I'm saying it has broken, but I see it's había. This is it had broken, which means it happened before another, something else that was already in the past. I decided to buy a digital camera, a new digital camera, because the old one had broken several times. Now, it had broken. When did it break? Did it break? It broke before now, yes, but actually even more so, it broke before I decided to buy a new digital camera. It had broken already before all this happened. It had already done this. So our point of reference is back when it happened. This right here, había roto, happened before decidí, before I decided. So I decided to do this because this had already happened. So this decidí, we can see is in the preterite. So it's something that happened in the past. This happened before that happened. Había roto happened before this event, which took place in the past. So let's move on to the next. Cuando por fin les dieron la patente, otros ingenieros ya habían inventado una tecnología mejor. So when they were finally given the patent, other engineers had already invented a better technology. So right here, dieron. Les dieron la patente. They had already given them the patent. This happened, dieron, happened sometime in the past. They had invented a better technology before that happened. So again, when we normally have, and I'm going to try to draw this out, and this never seems to go well, but let's give it a whirl. Not only are my lines all screwed up, this gets a little bit tricky, but let's say that this right here is, this whole thing, this line's in the past. This line's in the past. This blue X represents when they gave the patent. So they gave the patent finally to them. And when they gave it to them, choose a different color. So they gave it to them before that point, sometime back here. So this green action is this. Habían inventado. So this, you know, let me, I don't know if I have this continuous line because I'm just giving us a future, but let's mark right now on the line too. Let's say right here is now. This is the present. So something happened right here, right before now, we might use the pretérito perfecto. And we could say like, you know what? I've invented this machine. I've invented a new, a new machine. I have done that before now. I have done that. I've invented a new technology or a better technology. I've done that before now. Anytime before this yellow bar here. Anytime I would use, that's the pretérito perfecto. He inventado. I have invented. But now we're going to say that they've already invented it, but they invented it before another determined point in the past, which is dieron. This is when they gave them the patent. They gave them it here, and the inventing part here, this part happened earlier than that. So even further into the past. And again, as I said, I know I might feel like I'm over explaining this a bit, but it works if you can understand the difference between having done something and had done something. That's the exact equivalent in Spanish. When you want to say you have done something in English, you're going to use the pretérito perfecto. He hecho algo. If you want to use I had done something, había hecho algo. Just that point in the past is this happened before something already happened. All right, so let's look at a couple more examples. Now here, when the light went out or power went out, cuando se fue, when did the power go out? So let me mark that here with a star. So the power went out. When this happened, this is fue. This is preterite. This happened already. So I put the little X here to mark the present. This is right now. So anything that would happen right now would happen here. Before then is in the past. So the lights went out when, let's say they went right out then at that star. That's when they went out. So, in its relation to the present, it happened before now. Now, I had not saved the document. When hadn't I saved the document? Before the lights went out. I hadn't done this before this. So I had not saved it up until this point. The point of reference is here in the past. And before that, I had not saved it, which happened over here somewhere. prior to that star. That's when I'm using the pretérito perfecto. I'm sorry, the pluscuamperfecto. Now, if this is like the lights went out right now, the lights just went out. Bueno, it just they the reference right now is now. So acaban de irse, you know, we might say that it happened just now. We're using the present tense and we're saying that this just happened. And but at that point I had not used or I had not saved the document. So the lights just went out and I haven't saved. I haven't saved yet. Happened, you know, this happened prior to now. I haven't saved before now. But in this example, the lights went out in the past and I hadn't saved before that. Okay, let's look at another example. So in this one right here, María, Eugenia y Gisela nunca habían visto una estrella fugaz tan luminosa. So now this doesn't have, our point of reference isn't given to us. We don't have that here, but it doesn't matter. We still use the habían visto, just saying that they had never seen it before sometime in the past. I don't know when it was. We can go back here and it works out pretty perfectly. We have a star here. For they had never seen that such a bright shooting star before some point in the past. Again, that point in the past is not mentioned here. We just know, though, because of the habían visto, that this happened previous to some other previous event. So maybe we're talking about, you know, a night we went camping, and before that night, which happened in the past, this action happened even before that. You know, in this case, hadn't happened before that. So they saw this really, you know, shining shooting star, and they saw it here. But before that, they had never seen one like that before. Anytime before that. That's why we use the habían visto. Notice here it's actually nunca habían visto. You know, we split that in English usually. Had never seen. Had never seen. The order's a little bit different. That's because we cannot split this in Spanish. We've got to keep the haber and the participle together. The nunca would go before it. But again, this point of reference is in the past. Let's go on to the next. Ya me había explicado la teoría, pero no la entendí hasta que vi el experimento. So for this one, we can just say that this star represents when I saw the experiment. Or maybe you can use it as understanding. But either way, our point of reference is in the past already. The explaining part of it happened before that moment. So let's say that the star represents when I saw the experiment. I saw the experiment, and before that point, he had already explained the theory to me. So here's where I saw the experiment, and now I get it. But before that, he had explained it to me. And now this happened previous to something that happened in the past. And remember, this is our present tense, that little red X, this star here happened already. And then the pluscuamperfecto is used for anything that happened before that. Okay, so let's go on to our last. Okay, so for this last one, los ovnis todavía no habían aterrizado, pero los terrícolas ya estaban corriendo asustados. So los ovnis, which is a UFO, is, you know, we say UFO in English as the acronym for unidentified flying object. In Spanish, it also is an acronym, but you say ovnis. You don't say OBNI. It's objeto volador no identificado. So it's kind of a, you know, that's they actually say the word ovni instead of like it'd be like us saying, you know, UFOs. Actually, there might be something to that. All right, but anyway, the point of this is that this was happening. The Earthlings were already running scared. This was happening. This is when the Earthlings are running scared right here, and But what we're talking about is how they hadn't landed. At this point, when this happened, no point prior to that had anyone landed. The UFOs had not landed yet before this point of reference, which is when they were running scared. This was happening in the past. This, anything before that, we're using that pluscuamperfecto to refer to it. And notice the todavía here, aún, nunca. One thing I already mentioned it is that the había guardado and habían visto, habían aterrizado, había explicado. You're not going to separate those the conjugations of haber with the past participle, but we can do that in English. We can separate them. But also, it's really common to have stuff like aún or todavía or ya with this construction, with the pluscuamperfecto. Because again, referring to stuff in the past, so it's a lot of times you might want to say, I had already done that, or I had never done that, or hadn't yet done it, or still hadn't done it. And that's where these words come into play, aún, todavía, and of course the nunca and ya, real common to hear to see that in these constructions as well. All right, that's it for this video. Again, hopefully you're starting to see the pattern with what we're doing with the pretérito perfecto, the subjunctive of that, and the pluscuamperfecto, and we're also going to get into the subjunctive of that and how they are actually, once you know how to use them, you can see the benefit of spending a good amount of time to get these participles down. You know what? I've just decided. I'm going to also quiz you again on those past participles, the real common irregular ones. Let's do it. So I'm going to go through these at a similar pace like I did last time. But let's see what you got. Abrir becomes abierto. Now, again, if you really want to quiz yourself, maybe pause the video beforehand. Cubrir. Right now, if you're thinking of it, pause it. If you can't come up with it, but here's the answer, cubierto. Now I'm going to try to keep this steady pace going, so pause it if you need to. Decir, what is it? Dicho. Descubrir becomes descubierto. Escribir becomes escrito. Satisfacer becomes satisfecho. Hacer becomes hecho. Morir becomes muerto. Poner becomes puesto. Romper becomes roto. Resolver becomes resuelto. Ver becomes visto. Volver becomes vuelto. Freír, the irregular one, becomes frito. Elegir, the irregular form, is electo. Imprimir, impreso. Bendecir, maldito. Or did I say maldito? Bendito, and then cat's out of the bag, maldito for maldecir. All right, so it doesn't usually take that long for people to get these down, but it definitely takes some effort. They don't come all that natural. There's not that many good patterns to follow. So practice this. Just going through it with me probably isn't enough. You should, study this on your own, make flashcards, or, you could revisit these too, but that's probably not the best way. It's just a quick way that we can do it to go along with the lesson. All right, chicos, hasta luego.